Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset Podcast. My name is Constant Brooks, and this episode I talk about now there's the price of getting knowledge and stuff like that. Is what happens that. So this episode is about grocery shopping too. And what happens that. So grocery shopping. So I talk about buying things like, for example, so I mentioned before, like when you actually go to a grocery shop or stuff like that, you realize that a grocery shop or a shop or whatever place you go, they're not they're not stupid. There's a reason why they sell things 1 pound or stuff like that and all this stuff. You can buy this stuff accordingly. You can buy this stuff accordingly and all this stuff. And with experience, you know what to buy and how to buy it and stuff like that. And what happens I actually go to my university. One of my university experience was actually things like, for example, farmers day or something like that. Where one day during a month or stuff like that, farmers come and actually come and sell produce to at the university site. And what happens that pre- previously, if you actually go to the university and you grow up in my country, so for example, you go up in my country and you go to the university there. What happens that you naturally tend towards going towards the market where the university is, and then go and buy products, buy things like onion and whatever there and all these stuff. So what happens that when the tourist every Thursday or stuff like that, every time a farmer come and sell on the campus, that is actually a very good value for money, because what happens that you save taxi fare and all these stuff to actually go and um products, buy products and stuff like that. But so now I'm speaking as someone that actually passed through that university phase now and actually going out and you're an adult now, you're making money and all this. How happens that you're out there so in the university days, you're out there so getting money as someone. Or if you're out there so working, you're out there so in the university phase as an undergraduate or stuff like that. If you're a postgraduate or whatever, you're actually is a different. You're actually out here adult or stuff like that. You're actually getting money that is actually for you. If you're out there, so you're actually out there so getting money that is actually for you. And what? So what's going to happen is that with the same experience, we are talking about farmers coming and out there selling grown produce like um, grown garlic, onion, and all these stuff during those university days. You have the same thing out there, and that's the reason we like how when I go to university, it's actually different cultures and stuff like that. You have the same thing happening in the grocery store, but it's just that people out there are buying things in can and all those stuff, can things, can that and whatever. It's like what happens? What's the difference and all these stuff. I guess when I actually go through an experience and stuff like that, when I actually have time to learn how to cook, when I actually learn how to cook and stuff like that, you're going to actually realize that there is no difference. There's no difference. And what do I mean by that? You're going to actually realize that the same effort that when the family is going to market on a Sunday, going to actually do some farming, doing some market shop and market shop for food and product and all these stuff, you're gonna actually realize that that's the same effort they're gonna actually do in the grocery store. But combined with the thing like, okay, I'm gonna use can cutter instead of knife and all these stuff and all these things. You actually out there, so it's actually having a more efficient way of buying products. You make better deal or stuff like that. Or at the same time, what happens that no, you don't buy better or what happens that I'm not saying no is a better deal or stuff like that. What happens that what is a dying, what would be a dying economy, like boom, people out there so make um buy reap tomatoes, like for example, reap tomatoes and stuff like that. And you out there be like, oh my god. I'm gonna go buy tomatoes this week or stuff like that. What will happen is that because you out there, so you didn't know that okay, tomato in a can is actually the same, somewhat the same thing. You just have to actually be more aware of how you store the canned tomato and all these stuff. You'll be like, okay, now when you go, what will happen is that a normal day of shopping for a university person, a whole university campus or whatever, is 10 times more efficient because what happens is that for knowledge about the two avenues of grocery shopping will be like, okay, buying Aki at the market is no different than buying Aki at the store in a can and stuff like that. And it's like what happens? Oh, you still have to put in the same effort of knowing that okay, yeah, when you go to the market, you have to go this that actually force right manually open a Aki that is actually poisonous and all this stuff. So the same risk applies at both marketplace. So what happens that you actually go there and you actively buy those things, actively do know that what will happen is that you put in the same effort of research in buying a can Aki than can and looks like you would actually buy a Aki at the market. And what will happen is that your shopping experience is actually becomes more dynamic where you'll be like, okay, based on convenience, you can actually go and buy things elsewhere, save money elsewhere. I can go here, buy this real quick, buy that real quick. And what happens that your grocery list or anything didn't change, your ability to cook or anything didn't change, just that you know that okay, the can thing is the same thing, just like the Aki at the market, just that you have to actually out there to actively go out and be like, okay, this is actually a good can, this is actually a bad Aki, actually a bad thing and stuff like that. And what is that? Through experience, what you realize is that now doing that through experience, you can actually go to any store, anywhere, any location, and just buy things naturally, and be like, okay, you're naturally out there so buying things cost effective, but naturally buying things cost effective, and you at the best rate, where be like, okay, no, now you realize that, and that we have just understanding like, okay, yo, so that's the reason why I say you're using the reason I'm telling you this story because what is that in the university days you have the getaway where I talk about chicken buck and all these stuff and all these stuff. There's a reality right now where actually a chicken buck in a can and all these stuff. You'll be like, oh, I'm be like aki patty. No, these are episodes for people where I'm from. And so, aki patty and all these stuff. And what happens that those stuff are foreign, those of our foreign in the in like for people growing up, and that's the reason why I be like, oh, if you grow up growing up and stuff like that, you're grown up by people who are doing farming and all this stuff. So when you go and get a university degree, like for example, food or this or that, what happens that you're out there so taking what they know from back in the days and actually applying knowledge to it and be like, oh, you're out there so oh, you usually do farming, I'm coming out and doing agri this and that, and I'm processing the food now and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's like we did it. That didn't change. Farming didn't change. It's just that yo, we always adding something new to it. And it's like, but at the same time, the knowledge of being an experienced farmer from back in the days is actually important to know that even though we always applying university knowledge to it and be like, okay, we're also buying can, we're gonna buy can and plastic this instead of going to the market to go that you can actually be poisoned and all this stuff by not knowing how to use a can and all these things. Maybe like so it's like it's good to know. So the first thing you actually buy in grocery thing is when you actually go and buy those grown produces. Those times where you actually go, where you're just going out with the family and they're spending like a whole day to buy like one single breadfruit and all these stuff. When you grow up, you're gonna actually realize that those effort in knowing what is a cooking breakfast, what is all of those stuff, is actually very fundamental. So that when you actually going and buy these things that can and all these stuff and all these things that are so convenient, you act. and you actually pass that phase of going to market, just going to the store and buy these stuff. You actually be like, yeah, now I know why. Yeah, those are the core lessons where you be like, oh, now I know why you never see me go there because I you never really see me go there because I don't really need to go there again. Like, it's good to remember those. I think about back in the days and stuff like that. We're like, oh, back in the days, those were the things, but what happens that those knowledge compound. So sometimes that's the reason why sometimes be like, oh, I complain about the about how I ended my universities and stuff like that. Each year in my life and stuff like that, the knowledge compounds in different ways. And you'll be like, oh, yo, this underpaid as a there's asking for this amount of money and all these things. There's applying for school, applying for jobs and all these stuff, and they're not paying you those stuff. Even though you can't get those stuff, you can actually use those basic knowledge to get the dollars to actually make some weapons that you use that to actually change your roots. So what happens that you always get a bad job in a bad neighborhood or something like that, you just take different routes. You just natural people just naturally see you go to, oh, you always buy groceries at this store. Why don't you go to giant store and stuff like that? I say, yeah, you try to do that, but yo, I'm a university graduate. It's like I'm always changing the perception. I'll be like, oh, when you actually see me there, I know why I'm there and all these stuff. I'm actually changing what the interaction between those people. Where be like, oh yeah, back in the days, yeah, I didn't change. Just that, yo, I'm actually coming with a degree now. So obviously, when I buy this stuff, I'm buying this stuff somewhat smartly. Ah, cool. Somewhat smart. I'll be like, oh, certain stuff that I would actually pass on back in the days, we'll be like, oh yeah, we don't do that anymore. And that's what happened. We'll be like, oh, things called gentrification or upskilling or stuff like that. We'll be like, oh, you're coming from the ghetto and actually graduate and you go back and all these stuff. You actually start use these skills to change. I be like, you can't graduate from the university and then go back to the ghetto and not do apply this stuff. What happens that it actually be in vain. You actually be word of mouth. You'll be like, oh my god, I get my there's a flop in the degree and the amount of subjects for nothing. You'll be like, oh my god, I have 14 subjects and all these stuff and all these stuff. But what happens that you're still in the ghetto, you're still out there to live in the ghetto life. And it's like, what happened? You didn't you're out there so actually just proving where called I mean actually proving the ghetto people right. You'll be like, oh, streets things called street smarts and book smart and stuff like that. They're actually just doing that, they're actually proving the people right where be like, oh, you have to be street smarts and all these stuff. And actually apply those knowledge and people say going there actually buying certain stuff and be like, oh my god, you never see that. You see me out there driving towards the driving in the market and all these stuff. And it's like, what happened? We didn't change. We didn't change. We actually just changing the perception of the ghetto. It'll be like, oh my god. People out there, see first out this, you know out this I learn how to drive and all these stuff. And it's like drive and all these stuff. See first out there is like, what happened? We didn't change. It's just that we actually just applying the knowledge. We'll be like, oh, the days we actually see me back previously before the degree and all these stuff. You see me out there in the market spending a whole day going and buying a single breadfruit line. And it's like, oh my god, I hate leaving the house to actually go buy breadfruit and all these stuff. Those knowledge now, I'll be like, okay, no, I apply that now, and then you see me go there, you see me buying breadfruit like 10 minutes, you see me out there buying those breadfruit and stuff like that. But not only that, you see me go to a store and buy things in a plastic and all these stuff. I'll be like, why the hell you did that? All these stuff. I'll be like, oh, I actually got some knowledge as to why those stuff. I walk in that those are things where I'll be like, oh, you're going to act the higher you go, you're going to actually realize stuff. You see people like, oh, people carry on from foreign and all these stuff. Actually, where you are with export and all this, actually where you are is just that you actually you don't have the either product knowledge or enough money to actually go and buy those stuff at scale. So you have to actually just buy your local thing the same way. But with the knowledge, what happens that when you actually buy your local things the same way, you actually have enough money to actually buy the better product. You actually know why it's a better product. Because what happens that the foundational deal is actually what comes in and say, yeah, when you actually go and buy the better product, that is actually the reason why you go there, you're out there to see we doing that. And it's like, these are stuff where be like you're separating experiences, and that's the thing where be like, yo, I guess the funny thing what I'm saying is like, yo, say you're someone that coming and get on all these stuff, and then so every for my degree you do 3 years, so every semester you actually come back to the ghetto and all this stuff and all this stuff. So say for example you actually come in and you were a person that is coming from the ghetto and all these things and all this stuff and then boom, you made it to university. And be like, oh, you made it. So every time you come back to the university, you actually have to come in and share some college story to be like, yo, if the person from the ghetto can't make it to the college or stuff like that, you have to give them the experience of living in the university to give them something to say, yeah, the ghetto life is not there. So, and then same thing with the ghetto person, be like, yo, if you go back there, you have to actually get it. What happens is that when you actually go back to the ghetto or stuff like that, they always be telling you ghetto stories. Our story about back in the days. I'm like, oh, cool. Nothing, nothing is wrong with that. You never know when you're actually gonna need those lessons. Like for example, the ghetto days when you go back down, I have to go back to the market and buy grown produce. You actually have to buy onion and all these stuff grown onion and all these stuff. Or those ghetto days come back and it's like not because you want to come go to university doesn't mean that those ghetto days. But at the same time, not because you're out there so in the ghetto days doesn't mean they can't tell them about the future, be like, yeah, so boy, if you actually make it here, there's things like computer, all these stuff and all these things. And it's like, and it's like, you never know. You never know where be like, oh, that would actually push them to actually go out and be like, yo, I get a person, you see, a person from the ghetto and all these stuff. Even something simple like call center and stuff like that. They actually getting around computer. The boom bang quick, see them turn a program and it's like, what happened? Nothing did change. It just that, they get the ghetto days is just that, the days when we actually telling about the ghetto the days when we're talking about the ghetto days, every day they come, they see me, they hear me talking about the days of university and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, you see every summer, you see people coming out and exchanging days about the stuff like that. And what happens that's how you create a dynamic economy. Maybe like, oh, the market and the progressive and the wholesale selling the same thing. The China man is out there selling the same thing where just that different mindset is actually going out and buying the same stuff. And you're out there so going like, oh my god, a university going to be like, oh my god, I'm going out and or a PhD student be like, oh my god, I'm going to buy a tomato or all these stuff and be like, oh they go our undergraduate or man they get to all these stuff. Everybody out there so going and buying the same thing but just a different mindset. Everybody just actually just buy the thing with a different mindset and be like, oh, we actually just buy the same thing. And it's like, what happened? We didn't change. We just have different knowledge on this stuff. We have different knowledge on the same product. And it's like, cool. And what happens that you just what happens that the difference is your ability to take the time to actually go and learn why that method is the better way. You'll be like, okay, we actually buy, you'll be like, oh, yeah, but then you say, oh, buy things in bulk and all this stuff. You actually know why it's better to buy things in bulk. Not only buy things in bulk. What is the right things to buy in bulk? You'll be like, oh, buy this in bulk, buy this in bulk this way, buy this in bulk, buy a whole chicken and stuff. And that's the thing where I'll be like, oh, and why this episode is real relevant. If you're someone like me, like buying a whole chicken. During my university experience, there are people that buy a whole chicken and going out and take your time and out there to cut chicken and all this stuff. If you're someone like me, you never did that in your life. But what will happen is that you actually reach the point now where you actually go out and can afford to buy a whole chicken. You buy the whole chicken and you learn how to do it. And what will happen is that during those experiences, these are stuff that you learn going to your third, later years. When you actually learn to do those stuff, you actually know why buying a whole chicken is better than buying mixed parts and all those stuff. But not when that when actually buy do it for a couple of times, you actually be like, okay, maybe I know why now buying a whole chicken is better. Maybe actually we'll go here and buy a whole bag of whole chicken and stuff like that. And what happens that a person you naturally will see going and buy mixed parts and stuff like that. You never see them buy mixed parts again. You open up the avenue for a new person actually experience mixed parts, but not knowing that you actually upgrade yourself. You'll be like, oh, now I'm buying a whole chicken and taking time to actually learn how to cook chicken and all these stuff. But after I do that, you see me also buying a whole bulk of whole chicken and doing that. And I'm like, what happened? I didn't change. I still love my mixed parts. Just that I actually do the different avenue now, taking the time to learn the different avenue now. See me taking time to learn how to cut chicken and all these stuff and all these things. So to say that when you actually see me always buying certain stuff and you never see me buy it again, you just see me buying a different way. Or you see me, it's like, oh, it's like sometimes I did a change, just like, yo, we actually, you actually see me applying knowledge to stuff I bought now. It'd be like, oh, it's different knowledge now, different money and all these stuff. It's actually different knowledge. You actually see me on this and be like, oh, yeah, yeah, we actually doing stuff. Actually doing stuff different. You see me out there so doing chicken and all these stuff, and it's like, it's the same. What change? And it's like, what happens that all these simple things, this is the thing where we like all these simple things is what going to make all those things that I'm saying now. That's the thing where we like, oh, that's the thing about the university experience. All these stuff to me, it seems like a 10 billion person, out there I do 10 billion calculations or stuff like that. But it's actually simple stuff. Just that when I actually do it, because I was a person out there so lazy or what these stuff doing it. You see me do it, you actually what happens is that you actually see a whole economy or whatever does shift because what happens is that if you actually see me do it, you the people that basically ask or stuff like that. Oh, you see me out just asking people to do it or stuff like that, and I'm doing my way. Be like, oh, you actually they would actually be like, oh, no, I'm actually free to do something else. No, I'm actually my 24 hours actually free to do something else. I would actually naturally always be always doing this work. But it's actually able to do it. Now I can actually rely on them and say, oh, I don't feel like cooking today and all these stuff. You can do this for me. And I could actually confidently say, yes, I could, and all these stuff. And what happens that you actually is not a dead weight. You actually is not a dead weight in the home and all these stuff. And that's but this is just the basic thing about buying groceries and stuff like that. You when you actually first it's actually buying the groceries and stuff like that, you can actually put thought in it where be like, oh, you're the university, your degree, and that's thing about actually graduating and stuff like that. We'll be like, oh, even these lessons, these lessons you can actually use them in the university days and be like, oh, you're buying the can thing, and why the hell the can thing, why the can, buying this formula is better than all these stuff, because you pre-learn these stuff. What happens that when you actually go in the adult world, what the difference? The only thing is that you're gonna be doing that more. Like, so what happens is that you see my slow beginning of me buying, still buying from the market days and stuff like that. But the difference between you is that I would actually meet you at the place and be like, oh, I see you, and be like, oh, no, what, are you buying this for this reason? I'm like, yeah, I actually just found out. But it what the difference is, it will take me time to actually come to that conclusion. But when I actually come to the conclusion, you will actually know that, yeah, I actually put in thought as to why you not see me at the market and stuff like that. And what happens is that what happens is that those stuff would actually do these lessons would actually does change the economy. So what they'll be like, oh, this person you just see me come and buy every day at the market, and you don't see me for years. And what happens that we did a change. Just that I would actually buy the same thing now, and I actually just buy it differently now. actually just buy it differently. What happens? What happens is that that person now would be like, oh my god, all I know is this place, or stuff like that. Right? But you have the experience of me out there, so telling people that I usually see people come from this parish to go to university after I go and sell and all this stuff. Maybe you didn't know that. And you say, all right, because my business is slow, you're gonna see me out there to go to the university and start to sell. And just they go in the sell and all these stuff. See people actually see, or if they actually come and get to all these stuff, they actually see university people and be like, oh my god, no. And all these stuff, foreign exchange and all these stuff. What happens is like actually apply your knowledge. Uh, what and these are stuff you actually use to be like, yo, when I actually leave, if you grow up and like me, I'm like, oh, actually leave university and all these stuff. It's actually hard to actually start get that phase of the excitement of the university days in the adult year when you actually leave the university, you actually come back, you're actually back in the ghetto and all this stuff. And that's the thing when I actually come in and watch stuff on YouTube and all these stuff. You actually see people who are living the first world life, talking about taxes, California tax and all these stuff. You know, if you actually go up in the ghetto and stuff like that, you actually be like, oh yeah, you actually see people who are living the ghetto life. But the same knowledge is the same. The same taxes thing is the same. It's just that they they call it a hard knock life or stuff like that. You actually have is reframe it in a different way. Be like, oh, it's the adult years now. It's the 9 to 5 years now and all these stuff. Actually reframe it like, oh, I'm supposed to actually be here. I'm supposed to actually be here. So these you actually see me as a company and be like, yes, see me as a company, but what happens is that when I actually check the credential or something like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be a homeowner. I'm supposed to be out there so talking about home ownership and all this. You're supposed to see me not at really see me at the market or see me buying this and that. And when you see me, I can tell you why the hell I buy this way. You're supposed to see me doing that. You're supposed to see me and calling me names. Oh, rich man, no, don't see me again. All that side of the mind is like, oh yeah, you're actually supposed to say that. How happens that I actually have the thing to actually show that we actually out there, you actually see me leaving the ghetto. You actually see me out there leaving the ghetto. So you actually supposed to see all that side, all that mind, or get rich and stuff like that. It's like, oh wow, we actually supposed to. You actually supposed to be seeing that. It's like, oh, we're actually on the right track. So those are the things where be like, yo, sometimes actually leave and stuff like that. That's the mental thing where be like, yo, those are the stuff we're gonna realize. We'll be like, yo, we actually see certain things change and be like, oh, certain negative stuff. We'll be like, oh, yo, we actually. So, and that thing we're actually go to university and stuff like that. We'll be like, yo, people will actually look down on you and it's actually legit. That's the university experience. We'll be like, yo, when they actually show people, they see actually, people actually know when they actually come for the get on all this stuff. And like, oh, yo, and all this stuff. That's the cost of leveling up. Where be like, yo, all the fun and jokes will be like, yo, all this stuff when they actually go to higher level, it actually that will expose your front. Will be like, oh, yo, yeah, you if you're a ghetto person, if you're a gangster and stuff like that, when you actually go to university, be like, yo, you actually have to prove that. Be like, oh, yeah, you actually have to prove that you are what you say you are. And it's like, oh, that's the university experience. And what happens that it for every person that come in and say that is like there 10 year there's a group there that actually do that. And that's the thing like your front is the university days is so relevant because what happens that when you actually leave and stuff like that, if you leave the university days, that's the thing about those stuff. And actually go to the nerd days and stuff like that. When you leave the university days, all those front and fuss you made is actually phased out. Is actually phased out, and you are what you say you are. If you and that thing will be like, oh, you're out there to be in the gangs and stuff like that. You actually there's a heart actually dedicated to you. That if you actually say you're this, yeah, there's a heart dedicated to that, and it's like, oh, you actually become more you are, the more you are. So it be like, oh. certain hall call a person and get a hall and stuff like that. Because what happens that it's naturally get up people that go there. It's like what happens that no, we didn't change. that percentage didn't change. So what happens that you actually what happens that you have to actually go out and actually change the perception and saying, yeah, we ain't that person anymore. Like, yo, we're actually gonna go over here and be like, yo, what's new and all these stuff, what's new and all this stuff. And be like, oh, but that's the thing where be like sometimes you'll be the same place for years and be like, oh, why did you see you see that person all the side of the man and all this stuff? What happened? We're just trying to search for something different. We're just trying to do something different. So sometimes you see me at the market every day. All of a sudden you see me buying canned goods and all this stuff. Be like, yo, we didn't change. It's just that oh, it's trying something different. And it's like, no, you see me get a different results. And it's like, oh, yeah, we actually, the days of actually, those days were back back in the days. They'd be like, and that's the reason why, sometimes be like, when I go back to the university and stuff like that, I would actually, it's good to talk about those days to say, when I actually go back, things and the adult world and stuff like that, real life has actually just come and be like, I go back there, that that's the fun thing. That's somewhat the good thing about the university. When I go back there, every day you're refresh. It's a refresh. It's like every accomplishment or everything you actually accomplish or stuff like that every day is last year. It's gone. It's gone. It's set in stone and it's like that set in stone and it's gone. You out there and be like, that's it for this semester and all these stuff. When I come back, this is talking about last year. And what happens that the funny thing about talking about last year is that when I actually in the university level, when I actually come in and look, you actually do not you do not see people from last. You only see the people who made it to this year. So if you're not talking about this year, that means that you actually didn't matriculate. You're still talking about last year. Those are the funny stuff about actually leaving the guitar and stuff like I talk about the episode about everything has an expiration date. Certain stuff are there to actually be like, these are things you actually experience when you actually lose in those privileges to say that okay, yeah, and actually get them back you actually reach a new level. Like, these are certain talks where be like, and what happens is that you actually have to reach these levels to see that actually to see this what happens is that when you actually reach these levels and you actually go back down to the bottom and stuff like that, you actually have to actively go back and be like, you actively have to be like, you don't want to go back to the bottom. And it's like, and what happens is that the bottom changes. Because what happens is that those 3 years of university was the 3 best years of my life. Like, literally, the 3 best years of my life. And what happens is that I would actually go back and live those days again every day. But I don't want to go back and live those days. Those days are over. Those days, just like the degree paper, is actually set in stone. It's actually set in stone. It's like, just move on. Like every day you come in and talk about that, it's like, legit. It's good to always reminisce about those days. But like, sometimes you see me out there and like make a movement. It's like, those stuff, those days are gone. You actually have to re-meet us again and want us talking about something different. That's the reason why I'd be like, okay, I talk about vacation and stuff like that. It's like, maybe I've actually done it before. Maybe I've actually done these stuff before, but now we're going to do this stuff differently. We're like, we actually have vacation as a luxury now. To be like, every time you see me, you'll be like, oh my god, rich me killer, get rich and switch and stuff like that. You're actually supposed to see, you're actually supposed to say that, see me and say that every day, or else I'm actually not doing my job. I actually be a negative effect to you. Be like, every day you see me, you're supposed to be like, oh, you get rich and switch, Roman, all these stuff. You're actually supposed to say that. We say that. Why? Because what happens that I'm supposed to go there to doing something different. That's what's supposed to happen if you're out there to be like, and all these stuff. But that's the thing I be like, sometimes but the while I'm not just saying this stuff, you actually do this stuff for yourself. You actually find yourself and be like, okay, this is what I'm actually going to do. This is what I am. I think about the episode about careers all okay. Once I get it, everybody do it, and then what happens that what is actually exciting becomes the norm. Just like, for example, there was just an excitement of me getting the credit card and stuff like that. I actually didn't get the credit card. Now I have the credit card now. It's actually just the responsibility of keeping the credit card and all this stuff. There was a point in time we did have it. I was watching so many YouTube or stuff like that about people getting it and all this stuff, telling people that, about getting it and all these stuff, and be like, oh my god, but no, I actually got it. No, I actually have to do the responsibility of getting it and all this stuff. So that's the thing about everything. And be like, oh, they were back in the days. I was telling you about these stuff and all these stuff. What happens that no something happened and I actually got it. So what happens that you actually start speaking, start hear me start talking idealistic and start hear me talking realistic. And what happens that you can actually tell the difference of when I'm speaking idealistic and realistic. You actually see that I actually got it. Like, oh, we actually got it. And it's like, oh, yeah. So it's like, yo, all those funny jokes is like, yo, that is actually, we actually got it, bro. We all just are living it. We actually living it now. Yeah, so that's the thing. So that's the thing about the podcast excitement. Be like, oh, there was a day where, it's, sometimes like, yo, I speak the way I speak on the podcast is a way to actually be like, yo, it saves me time. Happens that sometimes when people come and ask me some stuff, I tell people direct, I'm like, please, what is that? No. Like, literally, the reason why I can't get rich and switch and boom, because, yo, I'm telling you these stuff. It's either I actually got the answer wrong and I didn't know the answer, or I actually told the answer, but you're too stupid to get it. And it's like, oh, the podcast is there for you to actually go back and listen to it and be like, oh, apply what I've actually learned. Actually learn and be like, yo, these are stuff I would tell you in real life, but you come back with the same ghetto or stuff, ghetto university or whatever attitude. I actually come back. I would actually have to adjust. If I didn't like your university's attitude, not I would like it the same way in the real world. I didn't like the ghettoways in my ghetto days. We actually will not correlate in the in the high days in the same way. So that in the when I come back to the ghetto and all this, so it's like we didn't change. Just that, yo, we actually getting better at what we are and all these stuff. So it's like, yo, you actually those are stuff where be like, yo, I grew up a certain place. And ideally, what happens that either you like that place or you don't like that place. And what happens that when you get more money and all this stuff, you actually become more who we are. So if you actually go tend to go back to the ghetto place, and like that means that you actually get more education and stuff like that to actually become more ghetto. It's like, yo, nothing is actually wrong with that. No, there's actually, and that's when it actually reaches level like there's actually nothing wrong with that. Happens that sometimes me actually go to the other greener side and be like, oh, this actual ghetto is the best ghetto, but it's like, yo, actually have to reach. And what happens that everywhere go is the same thing. So it's like, yo, but at the same time, we'll be like, yo, you actually have to, where you're born a certain place and you're always trying to either enhance it or change it. And what happens is that when you the difference is, every time you change it, you be like, oh yeah, what happened? It's like, yo, I actually passed through those phases, and the only difference is, I'm telling you, like, those phases I didn't like, we didn't like we always are keeping this thing business, and it's like, oh, we actually interact this way, and it's like, yo, we never we never get along, like legit. You actually if you actually get more money, you actually become more of who you are, and it's like, oh wow, you actually become more of that person. It's like, the episode where I talk about how a girl have usually 10 text man or stuff like that. You actually become that more of that person. So that means that if a person want to be exclusive and stuff like that, you actually become 10 times the girl that takes 20 man and all these stuff. The more we get together, the more I try. So it's like, oh, those stuff where be like, yo, when you see all people get rich and rich, like, no, I actually grew up and work for these privileges. Where like, oh, I work for these nice life and all these stuff to say that when you see me out there living that life with somewhat the perfect girl and all these stuff and living the perfect family life and all these stuff. You see me, and you see me always battered and bruised, you know. You see me always on the cross, you know, bro. Just to live this perfect, nice life and all these stuff. And you just see people always insulated from the ghetto. Every day you see ghetto people be like, oh my God, bro, man, get rich and stuff like that. Be like, oh, I actually work. I actually work. Grow up and see both life to say that this is the life that I'm out there so trying to get. That's the reason why you hear the podcast and stuff like that. If you actually go where I'm coming from, so like you really want to hear nobody, you actually will not listen to the podcast. The podcast is actually not for you if you actually come from where I come from. You actually listen to Vibes Cartel and all these stuff and all these things. You actually do that. Podcast for people that were born, growing up, see cartoon and all that stuff, seeing all these stuff, like, yo, you're trying to change those stuff. Like, you know, it's just funny all those days. But when you actually become an adult, you actually out there stuff, and be like, people used to call it taxi, taxi, that and all these stuff. And be like, oh, people is calling those, there's the people is calling you those stuff. And that's the thing we're actually going on, like, oh, that's the thing about being a seat and woman. But I see that man and be like, oh, you know, actually be with a girl like that. Be a girl. Be with a girl. What happens that? What happens that? That's the thing about the difference. Actually going out and do this stuff and actually be with a girl and stuff like that. Your value as a man is actually shown. Maybe like, oh, get a youth and stuff like that. Get a girl and stuff like that. And that's the reason why we like, why is it relevant? What happens that? The podcast is there because there was a time. That's the reason why I said something. I actually listen to the podcast. There was a point in time where this podcast really exists. How happens that all these interactions you see me doing, you're talking about. I was actually interacting with real people. But what happens that all those days remote chat and all this, I was actually telling you what I'm trying to do now. I'll be like, oh, now actually see me not in the ghetto and all this stuff. You see me out there, so even if you see me with a girl that toxic, this or that or stuff like that, I'll be like, oh, this experience in the life and all this, insulated from the thing. She out there, so seeing the future, seeing a good life even if it is a winning, she out there seeing a better life. Seeing a better life and it's like, oh, he is a toxic character and it's like, oh, if it's a toxic and you're like, oh, he is a toxic thing, it's like, oh, if you enter with me, it's like, oh, you not go back. She don't even want to go back to get her. So like, her idea is like, oh, she sees something better. It's like, oh, what happens that we actually you you we actually out there so born in these stuff. I actually was living these realities. And I say, yo, I do not want to go here. We actually want to go different. We actually want to go different. You know, stop it. You you don't go that's the thing about actually getting rich. It's one thing to actually watch a movie and actually be like, yo, I actually want to be the person in this thing. I'm like, oh, maybe like, oh, act like a lady, think like a man and stuff like that. Be like, oh, we actually watch the movie and all these stuff. I usually watch my wife and kids and stuff like that and funny stuff. And actually be it in real life. When they actually see us, they'll be like, oh yeah, we actually actively be like, yo. And those guys will be like sometimes the friend group will be like, yo, we actually be like, yo, the university days is nice and stuff like that and undergrad days was nice and all these stuff. And be like, oh, privilege and all these stuff. And it's like, oh, sometimes I'm blessed to actually realize that, oh, I was actually living this life and all these stuff. And you know, some days you'll be like, oh, we don't deserve it. And it's like, oh, yeah. I'm reminded every day that, yo, I actually deserve this life. You know, I actually deserve to live this luxurious life. Get to be called bro man and be like, oh, big years, I'm going to be rich in the future and stuff like that. The only difference, the only thing I should actually say is that people should actually see me as like, you didn't get richer, bro. You're not that rich and all these stuff. You know, those are the only criticism I should actually be taking. However, that I was told these stuff. But that's the reason for the podcast. Where you see me out is applying those lessons and all these stuff, trying to become who they try to say I was. You'd actually be like, yo, every ghetto person would be like, yo, we should actually actively not like literally, you see me out this every day talking about your living a ghetto and all this. please just actually just try to if you're this, and that's the reason why the university and stuff like that, it's good to have a room and all this stuff. It'll be like, oh, yeah, see the yes, that's the thing. In the you actually see the future. Be like, oh, actually be like, oh, you go there and do my degree. Oh, on a bright person do my degree and all this stuff. What happens that they actually come from a place that is actually pure dance people, and it's like, oh, a good thing you actually met me, because what happens that you actually see somebody bright and it's like, ah, cool. What happens that when you go back to your ghetto days or go back to your ghetto place and be like, oh, when actually talk about it, like, yo, that back in the days when I go to university, I see someone that was actually smart and all these, actually doing these stuff. And we out there so living, talking about it and dreaming about people. I actually, every time I go back to university, I actually see people doing that. It's like, I think about the ghetto days that they can't try and be like, yeah, that's one and all, that's one and all of people doing that. What happens that, you know, when I actually do it, what gonna happen is actually gonna start doing. When I go back, actually gonna start do it to your place and be like, oh, the university influence can actually influence you. And be like, and those are things called gentrification and all these stuff. And be like, oh, back in the days they call this big country, so you see me also buying this, renovating this, and all these stuff. You hear me talking about half of a sudden you hear me go, and that's the thing where I'm coming from. You see me as a girl, all of a sudden you hear me going on a 9 to 5. I see me also going at taking taxi going to 9 to 5 and all this stuff, and be like, oh my god, bro. I was taking taxi going to 9 to 5 and all this stuff. Half of the year me taking taxi, taking business, starting my business and all this stuff. And it's like, what happened, bro? The difference is that, every day they out there, so I'm going out, I was actually also taking in those lessons and be like, oh, yo, taking in those lessons and be like, yo, when actually I see me also living the life and then boom bang quick. I see me somebody employing me and it's like, what happened, bro? What happened? These are highs and lows. These and that's the funny thing, actually see the results, you see the highs, different highs and lows. And you see the different thing and be like, oh, I actually want to say this. Be like, oh, I'm so angry, I want to do this to you in real life. And it's like, oh, but I'm out there to civilize. So they say if I actually do that in real life, I go to jail. And what happens is that you see, oh, big person. And that's the funny thing, That's the funny thing, I'll be like, but actually I go to jail, be like, oh, bro, man, go to jail and all this stuff. Boom, bang, quick, all this degree and accolades and in person going to jail and all this stuff. Fall high and fall short and all this stuff. And all this. That's the thing about actually reading the Bible and funny thing about reading the Bible. Paul was actually in jail. Our parents like big accolades and all these stuff, and you out there to turn around preaching about Christ and all these stuff. What happened, bro? Man's like, bro, Christ was bigger than all these stuff. Like, every one of my degree actually became not when first day out time to serve God. It's like, what happened? But that's the thing where be like, yo, sometimes all your degree comes to naught. We actually go back and get it like, but at the same time, that because you already say your degree come to naught, doesn't mean that it's not to naught. It means that okay, you're supposed to still use it. But there's a level. There's actually the difference between doing it and doing it right. It'll be like, oh, when I actually go back and actually get these stuff, breaking out, the links versus network, the lingo. That's the thing, right? That's the difference between the different fields. Right? Like the lingo is actually different. The lingo is actually different. Leaf alive, and that thing about we actually go to do science. Aki is named Blagas Sapedia or something like that. Something like that. Be like, oh, the lingo is actually different. And what happens that this episode is very relevant to you because you can't serve two masters. You can't be in the ghetto and be like, oh my god, when I go back to the ghetto, be the ghetto person. Actually have to choose one part, and when you actually choose it, you're going to actually become that person. You're going to actually become that person. That's the thing about actually breaking that cycle. When you actually choose it, you actually become that person. And the other thing will be like, yo, sometimes be like, oh, our person, just ask that. You use the normal talking points to try to get a girl, and girl is like, style and stuff, style and stuff like that. No, just that, yo, the girl has a price now. price. We couldn't afford. We couldn't afford. There's a crying around a bunch of niggas talking about this girl and all this. So I'm like, no, bro, go home and go build my home. You know, to build my home, talking about this stuff, playing game. Oh, this actually yesterday actually play some Pokemon Go. Wish I had my Twitch with us. I want to see me doing Pokemon Go. Actually, do my Pokemon Go in the rain. In the rain, bro, to get some matchup and all this stuff. But it's me out there living those life, bro. I see me out there living the life, and you out there to see me doing it, and it's like I, all these stuff, all these stuff where I'm from is so different. It's different and all this. I think about is that the thing about the podcast is that sometimes I get some fans, bro, from everywhere. Every cycle of life now is like what happens. Like, you know, these stuff are different. If you come from the ghetto and you want to prove that you're ghetto to the ghetto people, it's like you actually would the podcast is not you actually is not a you actually have to be like, oh, the podcast is for you. There's a podcast that like how to reach that level. Like, but if you actually want to surpass, reach and actually do the stuff, that's the difference. It'll be like, oh, sometimes there's some people like, oh, you actually hear people like, oh, but and they actually see you living this stuff, and be like, oh, they actually saw you doing that, and they actually go on and see you living that life. They actually see you living those experiences, and say, I would actually take those experiences and live in your life. And it's like, oh, they would actually go and live my life, and those I would like, what happens? Like, oh, these these are things that they actually go through, where oh, we actually experience it to say, yeah, we actually live this life than that we actually go out and try to own stocks and all the stuff that nowadays are trying to buy guns and stuff like that. But if you see we also buy guns and stuff like that, you actually see we have a legit reason. It's like, these are the stuff where we like, oh, there's a competent work. There's a competent where things are right, but we actually have to work towards it. We actually have to work towards it and be like, oh, you're in one of the things we actually realize when actually reach the adult world is that the university days and all these stuff, those days are past. Like those experiences past. Actually, what happens is that in the real world, actually have to rebuild yourself. Like, oh, you actually become who you wanted to be in your university years. But in the adult years, that's the funny thing about the adult years. You actually come back to the ghetto. It's like, oh, you actually come back here. Actually, be like, oh, you remind that you come back. You're being grounded again, and it's like, oh, no, you actually be like, oh yeah, actually rebuild your. And it's like, yeah. Now we actually remember now. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. The actual excitement of certain stuff go away. And you have to actually rebuild new excitement. Be like, oh, certain stuff. So that's the reason why sometimes you be talking about, oh, some days, my nice trip to this and that and that. Oh, some days when I actually go, if I actually get to go back and all this stuff, will I actually enjoy those days, because what is that? Those days are gone. That's the episode we talk about. Everything has an expiration date. There's maybe actually something there that is actually different, that would actually be like, yo, separate. All these things I'm always complaining about, we just separate. We just separate and be like, yeah, we actually. And that's the reason why I actually what happens that my various work experience. You hear me talking about my trip to Canada and all this stuff and my nice hotel trip. And actually, I was working and all this stuff. And that's the thing about where being an adult and all the and actually coming out work. The various work experiences that I mentioned, I was going to various different hotels. Actually, go to a nice hotel there in my startup phase and all these stuff. Then the next phase, I actually went to a very high end hotel. So working actually get me to this show me. I grew up in the same country. I was in the same city, but doing the work experience, it showed me to a different life, totally different life. So we would actually see the same people, but we see them not. We see a different. We see a different life, and it's like okay, it's a different life, and it's like oh, okay. So yeah, if you usually all this, but coming from the kitchen, you're like oh my god, bro, yeah, we all this struggling and all these stuff, bro. It's like yo, at certain point, certain struggle talks supposed to. We're supposed to try to stop talking about struggle talks again. That's the days where that's where it's like yo, yeah, me complain about the picture and all these stuff, but yo, just see the graduation picture and all this stuff. Probably like, picture to say yo that this is gone, that this is gone, and you know everything placed in that picture is there in that story. You see me? We're just trying to all the lessons now is actually really trying to upgrade where I'm at now. I'm a homeowner and all these stuff. You're going to try to change some career and all. And what I realize that most of the stuff that I actually have now is actually old, getting old. Most of the things that actually tools and stuff like that are actually it's getting old. So I have to find competent ways to get rid of them and all these stuff and all these things. But yo, with everything, with everything is you when you actually is what happens is that things about life is the interaction with people is you actually be the same person. It's like you're actually the same person, just that we actually getting a year older, we actually becoming more who we wanted to be. It's like and that's the funny thing about actually everything the podcast, everything. I'm like, yo, I was actually the same person every day when I came to you. I was actually the same person. Only difference is that I actually get a year older to do what I actually wanted to do. So if you actually rejected me all these other time, or when you actually see me, you see me doing this. What would happen is that you actually will see me closer to doing the thing I was actually saying. You actually see me, so it's like, yo, I would come back and ask you the same thing. It's just that, yo, it's just that no, I would either one or two things. I would actually understand and be like, oh yeah, maybe the university days that proposal stuff that come like that. But what happens that all those struggles you hear me go through and you see me out as a living the life. So boom, you see me out as a living the perfect life in the adult years and all these stuff. That's the funny thing about all those messages every year. They can go back and see me back in those days when I was actually doing those messages and all these stuff, doing all the simple promo, all these stuff to say that yeah, when I actually see a different product, a whole thing that's gone, it's like wow, yeah, those that was back in the days. Those were back in the days. I would actually wish for those days to come back, but yeah, those days are actually gone. Those days are actually gone now. We actually change a phase now. What happens that those other phases for someone that is actually like me trying to come up and see now those struggle days and be like, oh yeah, yeah, those were the struggle days. Those were the struggle days. But yeah, we actually work to get these privileged days now to say but these are the tools that I actually used when I was starting in the struggle days to say that when you don't see me using those struggle days tools again, yeah, we actually would we actually don't want to go go back to those days. So that's the funny thing about the reframe mindset podcast and stuff like that. We'd be like, yo, yeah. The funny thing about it is that there's a market for everything. Every building have a purpose. Every building have a purpose. It's just that you have to actually go in with the right mindset. I mean, actually going with the right mindset. So that's really like, oh, I grew up in a country, like, oh, you're gonna be a customer service stuff like that. And I actually go through the door and I realize that oh, it's a different mindset. It's like it's a different mindset. You have the high school mindset trying to prove around and all this stuff. They have the adult way of out there so trying to make a living, trying to make a living, and there's a difference between actually making a living and building a career. There's actually a difference. There's actually a difference, and you have to actually know where you are. Is that, or are you out there so trying to make a living? Are you out there trying to build a life? And that's the real difference between wants and needs. So that's the important thing for this episode. I'll be like, yo, you're out there so gonna buy the same Aki, or just that it's going to be either be a want purchase or a need purchase. And what happens that it's the same act, And that thing about actually coming to your country and be like, oh, a person be like, come here 24 years and all this stuff, and this is the paper, bro. Oh my god, the paper is so trash and all these stuff. And be like, oh, they didn't change. What happens that when they come back now, they live in it's the same thing that they were actually the same act from back in the days. All of a sudden, it's like, no, they actually come back and buy the Aki. So they buy about 10 million Aki in the can. And it's like, oh my God, my normal customer, they don't see my normal customer again. And these stuff. And it's like, no, bro, what happens that we actually see the better way. We actually see the better way. So it's like, yo, because we actually see the better way now, we actually showing you the better way. So it's like, yo, those, those stuff is like, but is first me always buying Aki in the can and these stuff be like, yo, we didn't change. Like it's like, yo, I was actually trying to live this life from back in the days. It was that we found out that buying the can from that place. Buying the can Aki in the can is actually better than buying anything. I actually know why now. That's the difference. We'll be like, oh, you see all these videos. It's like, oh, we actually know why. That's the difference. We'll be like, oh, we actually know why these stuff is. So you actually will see me go there and buy stuff. I know it. And just knowing that we actually was struggling to do these stuff. Just knowing that we actually was struggling to do these stuff. So when you actually see me out there doing these stuff now, you'll be like, oh, yeah, we actually was struggling to do this stuff. What happens is that no, we actually see me doing it. I can actually tell you why I out there so doing these stuff now. And it's like all those and all those negative connotation we didn't change. It actually just reinforced me some more to say, okay, yeah, I'm on the right track now. So yeah, I want this. So you're supposed to come in and be like, oh my god, get rich and switch. How happens that I have a degree? How happens that if you actually grow up the way I grew up and all these stuff, you actually be like those people from the ghetto and all these stuff, be like, oh my god, getting a degree, what the not certain for a job. You, your family and all these stuff will actually come in and be like, oh, you get a degree and all these stuff, telling you these questions and be like, oh, what happens that, yo, just have to show them that, yo, boom, change the perception. They come down and that's when you change perception. Oh, come and be like, oh my god, this whole trash and all. It's like, yeah, yeah. And it's like, when come and say, oh, what happened? No, no, bro. You're just talking about back in the 90s, bro. Meet us in, we are 2025 now, yeah. It's trash. It's trash, but we are just using the trash to its fullest potential. It's like, oh. And that's what happens that, oh, we're talking about the struggle days up slavery, all of a sudden, boom, bang, quick. Let's see. This independence, let's see, 10 million, a compound interest of 10 million struggles and all these subcarriers. One person took the effort to say, yo, what instead of all this, complain about living in ghetto, try to change and live outside of the ghetto, bro. Or trying to change and live outside the ghetto. And it's like, ah, cool. And actually change up the stuff and be like, oh, actually go to those stuff. And that's the difference, be like, oh, when I actually go to my certain place, talk about Bob Marley and all this stuff, and go there, say, oh, historical style, and be like, nah, bro, I don't want to go there and be like, yo, people will just see me as a historical style, bro. Nah, bro, I'm a relevant building, bro. I'm a relevant revenue generating building. I go there to see me out here, so welcome to this and that now. Nah, bro, that's the thing about actually passing those people, like, yo, I ain't no damn historical site, bro. I want this a revenue generating thing coming in now, ready for business and all these stuff. So this is another lesson now from Smith Brooks in 2025. So back in the days, why you have to ask him blah 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 boom bam quick. And after you go through this, grow where I grow, be like, yeah, this is the reason why I have to ask him. Try that thing and it failed. I will try that thing and this what happened. This what happened. We actually try this stuff. Now we actually have to live this stuff. It's been like, okay, this is what we're trying to live this stuff now. It's like, alright. But those are some people like, yo, These are things where actually coming in when you actually reach this level. Everything new you try or stuff like that. When it feels ideal work, the blowback is actually coming and it's like you have to live with it. I'm like, oh my god, this is my new reality now. And some of they don't just try to rationalize why they're living this stuff. But at the same time, I try to reach a point and be like, yo, you tried it and it failed, bro. This is it now. This is it now. Where it's like, cool. Yeah, so boom, boom, Bancroft. This is our reality now. This is our reality now. Boom, Bancroft. We work to change it. But if it wasn't tried, if it wasn't tried, we would have tried will go there and stuff like that. So those items like they it's the same thing with buying the groceries now. So it's a buying the same groceries. It's just that no, when a cereal is a buying all cans, the cereal is a buying full chicken and all these stuff and be like, buy full chicken and all these stuff. Be like, yo, it's the same chicken, bro. It's the same thing. You just never gonna see me there again buying that. That's the reason why the episode about chicken buck and all these stuff, you never hear from those university days. You hear me bought those chicken buck in it. You never hear me buy another chicken buck again. That thing, you know. I'm like after I listen to the episode, I'll be like, oh, that chicken buck experience. You never see me buy a chicken buck again because I actually went out and actually bought the chicken back to say, yo, this was actually trash, bro. This was actually this was actually get up with like your oh, it's actually living struggle like bro. They should actually ban those stuff, bro. I was actually eating skin, bro. I was actually I was actually eating skin and bones, bro, to say that. So those are some people like, oh, but when you actually see me living that life, you know, what happens that you cannot see you didn't see me living that life. When you actually see me living the balling life, there's no one that can say that, yo, we didn't live the opposite life to tell you that, yo, this is the better option. The chicken butt is in the days, bro. I actually went to university and see people that said they buying whole chicken and all these stuff. This is the way, bro. This is the way. We actually have to learn how to do some whole chicken and all these stuff. And it's like, oh, you see me also doing that now. It's like, yo, cause actually see this. We actually have to do these stuff, buy the whole chicken and learn to cook some whole chicken so that we can actually find a better way. We actually have to use can cutters now instead of knife because what happens is that when we buy the whole chicken, we need the knife as sharp as possible to cut the whole chicken and all these stuff. And that's the reason why the podcast is there, be like certain friend group and all these stuff, be like all these things are what I would actually. That's the reason about growing up. We be like, oh, there are actual people from different friend groups. Where actually, oh, that's the cost of progressing. Like, oh, actual people from different friend groups. So I can't be talking always ghetto. No, you actually have to speak university way to certain people to say, yeah, we're actually making some progress. And be like, oh, yeah, some ghetto you like, oh, yeah, we actually prove ghetto you to graduate, but sometimes we actually come out to the ghetto and be like, oh yeah, certain things in the ghetto is there for a reason. Certain stuff in the ghetto is there for a reason. If I always trying to go university, they be like, the ghetto I actually lose the ghetto lesson. I actually lose the ghetto lesson. I'm like, oh yeah, but it's the same thing. I'm like, oh, that's the difference between upgrading something and actually understand it. So when you see me up there, so finally that um well, see me you will see me out there, so buying can peas or these stuff. At one point I was actually buying the same peas, but it's just that after a while I see that okay, the same peas. What happens? You will see the progress of me changing from stove to fully 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 rice cooking, and it's like these are things what happen. These are things what you actually see me do to say yo, you actually saw me out there, so living those gas stove like living those gas stove experience to say that adult a university people out there fresh out of university out there, so come back and feel depressed and all these stuff, be like yo, you actually see me out there, so I was living those like back in the days living the same struggle life, bro. Just that what happens like you have a tool list now to just pass through those states. Boom bang quick, boom bang quick, boom bang quick. We're gonna experience this. We're gonna experience all these stuff. You just ignore all the negative. Yeah, you just part all the negative part of it is just gone. Like just gone. Just get all the nice part of it. It's like cool. And it's like yo, that's the thing. We actually was living that ghetto life. So we actually see what was that's the thing about it. See we living that balling life and all these stuff. We actually was living that life to say that yo, we actually would not going back there. You know, we go back there and be like, cool. Good to talk to your friend and talk about the good old days. But when I actually see you now, I try to be like, okay, we actually go back and it's a different thing. It's like, oh, imparting knowledge. That's different knowledge the podcast. I want this imparting knowledge. You know? Or it's the imparting knowledge. You know? It's like, that's the difference. Like, you know, back in the day, though, it's a talk casually and funny. It's like, no, I want this imparting knowledge, pushing the barrier and all these stuff. And like, okay, yeah. You know, fun and games. You know, fun and games. I was this person, but no, I'm actually somebody now. It's like, cool. It's like, these are happens that my words have weight. So happens that I would tell you these stuff. And happens that I would actually have to go out and test them now. So you would actually go out and see me test those stuff. And when I test them, I get the answer now. And I say, yeah, okay, yeah, this is the reason why I see me also living this life. This is the reason you don't see me also buying these stuff and be like, oh, you didn't change. You didn't see the buying stuff on the market isn't part of that. I would say, yo, buying stuff on the market is for people who just leave university and have no form of income or nothing like that. And it's like, oh, that's enough for you to survive on. That's enough for you to survive on. To say, oh, until you reach my level. When I actually reach my level now, you'll be like, okay, now you're out there to buy one full chicken and all these stuff. And by the time you actually reach my level of buying full chicken, but it's to see me also buy full chicken at scale, bro. And all these stuff. And all these things. And what happens that those ghetto lessons didn't change. I those lessons didn't change, just that I'm actually moving up. Actually moving up and it's like, cool. You actually moving up. You actually a certain kind of what is that certain kind of thought was fun. What is that I reached 11 or I reached a certain kind of thought is actually um anti it's actually anti this thing like cool like I would have the same thing in the universities. How happens that the universe up and that's the thing about that I would have the same tendency just like back in the day. The same mindset. The same mindset. It just that what happens that I'm out there trying to make funds with it. It's like, cool. And it's like, oh, that's the thing. I'm like, oh. So the difference is that these are things you can actually see me go through. So you actually see me if you actually knew me and stuff like that from way back in the days, from in the basement days, you actually hear me talking about getting Tesla and all these stuff. I'm like, oh, what happens? Like, I did. If you actually knew me and grow up, you realize, oh, I didn't care about cars back in those days. That's the reason why I'd be like, oh, some people say this. Oh, why are you going to drive in school and all this stuff? I didn't care about cars back in those days. This stuff, I was always getting driven, always getting driven, and all this stuff. It's like, why the hell would I even need care about cars? I get a collection car, and that's the reason about actually living that privileged life. To say I can say in 2025, oh my God, my uncle gave me this gift, car and all this stuff, and I took it out of the box, and I know it loses value and all this stuff. You know, the thing was a gift, bro. They gave it to me, and I actually learned. No, I actually learned to say, yeah. If I actually get these stuff now, I would actually know it's a collection car. But if you're out there, so actually getting gift out there, so be like, oh, I'm going to resell value and all this stuff. It actually didn't like the gift, bro. I actually didn't like the gift, bro. But it's like, oh, we actually get the gift now, and then this lesson say, okay, if you're out there, so when I take it out of the box, this is my experience. Then so when I take it out of the box, 99% I think it's lost its value. So it's like certain stuff, people like yo, it's a key for sentiment. It's like, cool. But everything on a shelf life. That's the reason why this episode will be like, oh, everything on a shelf life will be like, oh, even though I took it out of the box and those stuff, that lesson about the collection thing is actually relevant to say that, when this car finally breaks and all this, when I see me throw it away, you see me buy my actual collection car. You never see me always take it out of the box again. You never see me do that. You never see me do that. You actually see me always keeping the value and all this stuff. But those are things I'd be like, sometimes you see people they see me always and I see me always doing certain stuff. And it's like, it's like, why else see me always actively going out and studying for this and all this stuff. So it's like, no, back in the days we didn't care. I was always getting the reward happens that I actually want this, I actually want the Tesla. It's like, it's people like, oh, gas and all this stuff. It's like, oh, I actually want the Tesla to see if gas. But what happens that I live in the country, I live where I'm from. I have to go through use and learn how to actually get a license, drive gas and all this stuff, do manual driving and all these things to say that when you see me out, it's a fully what happens that the reason why I'm saying it because people right now is out there driving Tesla and all this stuff as I speak now. But this is the journey for you where be like, comparison is the thief of joy. If you're out there so running around trying to rush your level, you're going to get it and you actually be the anti the person that actually doesn't care about the podcast. You actually is a person who is you making the podcast for profit and actually the get a person doing the podcast. So that's the thing about even the podcast. You will travel and stuff like that. There's a getaway to do the same thing. You'll be like, oh, this so I actually listen to those episodes that stuff like that, actually be like, oh my god, talking about the get woman and all this stuff. Like, oh, yeah, it's good to hear about those stuff. But like, oh, I have the degree for a couple years and all this stuff. There's actually somebody right there right now. Like, yeah, 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 it's fun and all. You teach me how to get woman and all this stuff. Show me how to get a job and all this stuff. And this is the level. Be like, okay, yeah, we actually show how to get a job. Just find a way to get a job now. You actually find a way now to say, okay, now we're going to find luxurious brands and all these stuff. I see all this. You see people talking about 401k and all these stuff. You come and get on all these. When you go to job and ask about 401k, and it's like no, it's like no, it's like yeah. What the episode is basically saying that we live a certain life, and we also and what happens that certain life, if you actually that thing about when we actually come from where I come from, that certain life is there if you actually go back down there and actually go back there. But what happens that you're just trying to bring that life to where you're from. You're just trying to bring that life to where you're from. where you're actually from. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. So what happens that you have to actually reframe your mindset to say, when certain things, we actually do certain stuff now, you is not saying you change or anything. It's doing you actually changing the perception of the same stuff. Be like, oh, yeah, actually going out and actively saying that, yeah, this is this and all this stuff. We're actually living what we always are doing. We always are living what we doing. And but what happens is that when they actually see me doing it, or actually see me do it, it looks so floppy now. Be like, it looks so floppy now, but it's like, um, when accuracy come together. So that's the reason I'm like, oh my god, you know, me talking about Tesla for years, also doing manual driving and all this. But like, oh, what else do they care about driving? It's like, oh, and what happens? I tell people this to invest in Tesla and this to come up with some of my friends when I talk about them, I said that's the reason they only care about the money. And it's like, cool, you know, invest in Tesla stock because it's actually going to rise and all this stuff. Yeah, actually care what I realized that I actually have to get money to actually get these stuff. So what happens that I'm telling them for that, but when I actually get the car, you hear me getting the car to this to get the girls and all these stuff. I get the car because I actually love Tesla. And that's the reason why I'll be like, oh, when I get a person actually traveling and all these stuff, they actually see the the winning in you. It's like, oh, you actually actually see the mindset of shortage in you when it actually go there. You'll be like, oh, what happens is that there's a reality when you actually get the Tesla and stuff like that. So that's the thing, when you actually get a car and stuff. But when you actually get the Tesla and stuff like that, you actually going to realize that people didn't even care. You're gonna realize that people, cars and everything is so in abundance that you will legit you I must say you legit out there so that you're that's the thing about I say mindset. That's the reason why I actually reframe mindset podcast where be like, yo, when you actually get the stuff that you're out there so going like, oh, if you're out there so be like, oh my god, how you out there so making money and stuff like that. When you actually get money and stuff like that, you're gonna realize that people with actual money didn't even care about how you actually get it. You grow up in that you can actually walk in and tell how you get it already. They actually walk in and tell and it's like, oh, those are stuff where be like, oh, actually when you actually always getting these stuff and like oh they can actually I think about actually the funny story actually listen to these stuff and be like oh the friend group are about to stuff like that be like oh coming from slavery days and stuff like that probably that it can happen that you actually see people that came from the more privileged side and be like oh my god we actually was struggling to get this freedom and it's like oh we actually see in real life and it's like oh maybe we don't see the full version of you we don't see the full version of it, but you know, there was a point in time where we actually was fighting for this privilege that we have, and the plantation that was actually actual dark, and it's like, oh yo, and in 2025 there's actually people coming out and actually talking that way, and it's like, yo, you know, it's funny. It's funny to say, oh, because that's the reason why, oh, that's the reason more you hear me talking about something like, oh, how happens that you hear me talking very idealistic, and they will actually see me go out in the streets. They see me out there in the plantation. So that's basically what happens. It's like, yo, they see me out there so portraying. That's the thing about podcast. They see me out there portraying that I'm out there so living this the first world lifestyle and all this. They actually see me in the streets. They see me out in the ghetto. They see me with the chains, cheap the shackles, call it and all this. I was like, yo, what happens? Like, yo, what happens? Like, yo, is one thing to actually speak this stuff, or actually see you attain it, bro. You have to actually maintain it and say, yo, this is actually but so yeah, so you actually see you see the shackles and all. And that's the reason and the reason why I say that is because when you actually work for these stuff, when you actually get it, there's supposed to be no denial that it's actually yours. That's the thing. That's the reason why more I hear people say about getting money and all these stuff. When you actually see me with the money and all these stuff, you be like, oh, it's actually mine. It's actually my money. It's like, oh, when you actually take it from me and all this stuff, you're like, oh, that was actually my money, bro. Like legit, when you actually take it out of my hand and actually use it, and it's like, oh, you actually used my money that I was actually supposed to use. I did not give you this money. It's like, oh, those are the stuff where I be like, oh, those are the things where I be like, when I actually get money and stuff like that, you're are actually level up. When you actually level up, you realize that your words are whatever you just you just fall short because you're actually gonna go through people who are actually living the life that you always put you're actually going to meet the people that actually was living the life that you were out there so listening to us like that and you're gonna be like oh you actually you actually you get the Tesla and all this stuff cool yeah no yo that's a Tesla bro and all these stuff no it's like yo no, we're just maintaining Tesla now. No, you never hear me talk about the Tesla again. That thing, when you actually hear me get the Tesla, you're never going to hear me talk about the Tesla. When I hear me talk about maintaining it, how to clean it, and all these stuff, then they're going to hear me just say, oh, I'm going to Mars, bro. You're going to hear me say, I'm going to Mars. You're going to hear me say that. And it's like, you're going to hear me struggle to go to Mars. You're going to hear me lifting some bugs to Mars and all these stuff. And they're going to just see me on Mars, bro. And they're never going to hear me talk about Mars again, bro. You're never going to hear me talk. No, you're never going to hear me talk about Mars again. You're not gonna go on my Facebook page and you're not gonna see your favorite Martian, bro. You're just gonna see my name as like boom with my identification that see he lives on Mars. My Mars is better than Mars, but and it's like on Mars. And it's like, oh cool. And it's like, yo, that's the thing. That's legit what they can actually see. But what happens that I'm actually portraying a future. I'm actually going to the future. We're actually not living in it. It's like, oh, it's good. That's really for this episode. Be like, oh, these are things where I would actually be out there so telling you in real life. These are stuff like out there. So I was telling you from real life, but what happens that your level was actually denying me this stuff. I'd be like, oh, yeah, um, I wanted to be a scientist. What kind of scientist you want to be? I didn't know that you were a different kind of scientist, bro. Miss Harvest. And we actually didn't know this stuff. I just wanted to be a scientist because, that was thing back in the days. Or we didn't know this stuff. Boom, bang, quick, all this stuff. You see me to live in the biochemistry lab and stuff like that. Oh, what does your degree and stuff do? I said, yeah, bro. Give me some time, bro. Actually, know now that this thing is actually called chemistry of life. So I'm actually supposed to do stuff to advance your life. Like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So actually know that. Oh, how can you think make money and all these stuff? I was like, oh, give me some time. Actually, finding the way. So it's like, and the thing about doing something revolutionary is like, this have to prove it. It's like, oh, but we actually have to be revolutionary. We actually have to become revolutionary. Actually, our real is gonna be in the plantation, and you're gonna see us out there. So in our shackles, and all these stuff. You see me ironing right now. It's a little bit ironing to actually go to church and all these stuff. I want to go to church to actually run some Go and Pokemon Go and all these stuff. We're supposed to be ironing to go to church and all these stuff. I don't even know if I'm gonna make the church in time, but it's like, yo, these are stuff I'll be like, okay, when I see me go there and all these stuff, I'll be like, yo, it's the same me from back in the days, man. It's the same me with the same stuff number. It's just that, yo, even when I go there, if I hear only one word, bro, if I only hear one word, bro, that one word is actually better than zero. That one word is actually you don't see me go back to the same church the same way, bro. Actually came back with something different. I just never hear me talking about those struggles, certain struggles again, bro. You hear me talk about some new struggles. Every time I go back to church, one time I go back to the church, bro, you hear me talking about getting the card, bro. It's like, yo, you never hear me go back and talk about that stuff. If you see me go back, you never hear me talk about that stuff again. You hear me talk about buying more stuff, bro. It's like, oh yeah, so this drop our new month. That's the thing. I'm like, oh. See me go back to the church, right? See me like playing Pokemon Go, bro. And it's like, why the hell you out this to see me playing Pokemon Go at the church? And it's like, yo, you work for these stuff, bro. I work to actually play the Pokemon Go. All things that I'm telling you, bro. When I go, I'm telling you, for a person right now out there to see me playing Pokemon Go, there's a church right now, bro, that has cards. You go there, you're paying credit cards, all these stuff and all this. I'm telling you, bro. Yo, it's a living a floppy life compared to them, bro. And it's like, these stuff I'm going there to church tell that these are the grown lessons that are going on left. That when you actually go there and you see those life, and you're gonna be like, oh, you're gonna be the fish in the pond, bro. That's the thing about the gangster life now. They're different levels to the gangster life. So when you actually go to that level now, you're gonna see like, bro, you have the gangsters with credit cards, bro. Yes, gangsters with credit cards. And you'll be like, oh, it's actual gangsters with credit cards. So that's the thing where we like, oh, we did actually change, we actually just reframe ourselves. We'll be like, oh, we're actually nerds with credit card now. So we actually see the same gangsters and all these stuff from back in the days. The only thing is that we have cash our card, please. It's like cash or card. It's card now, bro. So that's the thing. I'll be like, yo. That's the thing about the Reframe Mindset podcast. Where it's like ongoing process. Will be like, yo. It's like, we did a change. Like, yo, you actually have to, with every freedom and stuff like that, you actually have to fight for these subjects. So you never see, unless if you always start living that life, we actually, the life is actually accessible to everybody, but what happens that you actually have to use it for good. Actually have to use it for good. Actually have to go be like, oh. So that's the reason why I talk about even the Christian world and stuff like that. Here people talk. There's actually people right now studying the Bible, do some Obi and all these stuff and all these stuff. And what happens that those things are relevant. Those stuff are relevant. But if you actually do not know about this stuff, you're just running around naive, thinking about Bible going to heaven and all these stuff. And then boom bang crap is here, that's in the streets and like what happened, bro? They slap you with the Bible, bro. They slap you with the Bible, bro, and see all this in the streets, bro. It's like, yo, like they obey you, bro. It's like, and it's like, when you go to school, like, oh my god, obey isn't realize that, yo, I actually live here for a while, bro. It's like, yeah, those so far, those so far, you just that we don't fully understand it. We don't understand. But with time, with everything, we understand it, and then we understand it now. We'll be like, yeah, we ain't talking about it now. But all we know is the lure of it, where our family told us that it's real. We don't know when we get it yet. We don't know when we get obvious yet and all these stuff. We just know that when we get our stuff like our daddy slap me with it or what, no, it's that no, I actually have to know when I'm getting obvious. That is the difference. And we're like, oh, this is new. To actually know where we also getting it and preventing it. Right? So these are the struggles where we like, yo. But when I see me also living that balling first person life and first world life and all these stuff, like, oh, these are the struggles I actually go through to live those luxuries. And I see me out there. I see those luxuries and see me also living that. So that's the thing. That's the thing for this episode. And thank you for listening and look forward for our next episode.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.